and welcome to Swayambhu Kannada language learning series. My name is Varsha T. Nayak and I will be your guide on this learning journey. In our previous class, we expanded our knowledge of the verb iru, which means to be in English, to include habitual and future form using the non-past tense marker ir. We reviewed the paradigm table observing how iru changes based on person, number and gender. The first person irtini, which is singular, and then we have irtivi, which is plural. In the second person we will say irtiye, which is singular, or irtiri, which is plural. In the third person it will be irtade, which will be masculine singular, irtale, feminine singular, irtare, plural. Neuter gender will be iratte, which is singular, irutve will be plural. We also covered the negation form iralla, which expresses what won't happen, as in the example, Namma tande maneyalli iralla. Namma tande maneyalli iralla, which means our father won't be at home. Today we'll be exploring a unique category of verbs in Kannada, that is defective verbs. These verbs behave differently from the regular verbs we have studied so far. So understanding them is the key to mastering Kannada grammar. Let's delve deeper into the defective verbs in Kannada. We'll break down the concepts, provide more examples and address potential points of confusion. What makes a verb defective? Regular verbs in Kannada change their form to indicate tense, past, present or future, number, singular or plural, and gender, masculine, feminine or neuter. Defective verbs, however, lack this ability. They are defective because they don't conjugate like regular verbs. They have a fixed form. Why are they defective? Despite their defective nature, these verbs are incredibly common and essential in everyday Kannada. Understanding how they work is crucial for speaking and understanding the language. The dative case and defective verbs, a closer look. The connection between defective verbs and the dative case is fundamental. In sentences with these verbs, the subject of the sentence is expressed in dative case, not the nominative, the usual case for subjects. Think of it in this way. With these verbs, the things that wants, likes, knows, etc. is not grammatical subject in the typical sense. Instead, it's more like the recipient or experiencer of the action or state. Let's illustrate with beku. Beku, which means want. The regular verb, which is, for example, ನಾನು ಕಾಫಿ ಕುಡಿಯುತ್ತೇನೆ. ನಾನು ಕಾಫಿ ಕುಡಿಯುತ್ತೇನೆ. I drink coffee. Here, ನಾನು is the subject in the nominative case and I perform the action of drinking. In the defective verb, it will be ನನಗೆ ಕಾಫಿ ಬೇಕು. ನನಗೆ ಕಾಫಿ ಬೇಕು. I want coffee. Here, ನನಗೆ, to me, for me, is in the dative case. I am the one who wants the coffee, but I do not directly do anything to the coffee in this sentence structure. The action of want is to me. It's more of a state of being. This dative construction is consistent across all the defective verbs we are learning. Let's explore with more examples. Saku. Saku, which means enough. ಅವನಿಗೆ 2 ರೊಟ್ಟಿ ಸಾಕು. ಅವನಿಗೆ 2 ರೊಟ್ಟಿ ಸಾಕು. 2 rotis are enough for him. Here, avaniಗೆ, which means for him, is dative. The enoughness is experienced by him. Then we have ishta. Ishta, which means like. ನನಗೆ ಪುಸ್ತಕಗಳು ಇಷ್ಟ. ನನಗೆ ಪುಸ್ತಕಗಳು ಇಷ್ಟ. I like books. Nanage. Nanage to me is dative. The liking is directed toward me. Gottu. Gottu, which means no. ಅವಳಿಗೆ ಊರಿನ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತು. ಅವಳಿಗೆ ಊರಿನ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತು. She knows about the town. ಅವಳಿಗೆ, to her, is dative. Knowing about is the state of action. Let's look at the negative forms for clarification. The negative forms work in the same way. The dative case remains crucial. ನನಗೆ ಚಹಾ ಬೇಡ. ನನಗೆ ಚಹಾ ಬೇಡ. I don't want tea. ನನಗೆ is dative here. ಅವನಿಗೆ ಇಷ್ಟು ಸಾಲಲ್ಲ. ಅವನಿಗೆ ಇಷ್ಟು ಸಾಲಲ್ಲ. This much is not enough for him. Here, ಅವನಿಗೆ is also dative. ನನಗೆ ಸಂಗೀತ ಇಷ್ಟ ಇಲ್ಲ. ನನಗೆ ಸಂಗೀತ ಇಷ್ಟ ಇಲ್ಲ. I don't like music. Here again, ನನಗೆ is dative. ಅವಳಿಗೆ ಅವನ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. ಅವಳಿಗೆ ಅವನ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. She doesn't know about him. Here, again, ಅವಳಿಗೆ is dative. Let's look at the common mistakes to avoid. Using the nominative case instead of dative with these verbs. This is a very common error for learners. Trying to conjugate these verbs, remember they don't change form. The best way to master defective verbs is through practice. Try creating your own sentences using these verbs. Pay close attention to the dative case and the fixed form of the verbs. Read Kannada texts and listen to native speakers to get a feel for how these verbs are used in natural conversation. If you have any specific scenarios or sentences you're struggling with, please share them and I'll be happy to help you understand them better. While the dative case is often used with these defective verbs, it's not required in every instance. There are nuances and it's important to understand them all. Let me clarify and expand on what we have discussed so far. The dative case, usage and exceptions. As we have seen, the dative case marked by ge is frequently used with words like beku or beda, ista and gottu to specify who is wanting, needing, liking or knowing. For example, ನನಗೆ ಕಾಫಿ ಬೇಕು. ನನಗೆ ಕಾಫಿ ಬೇಕು. I want coffee. The dative is ನನಗೆ. ನನಗೆ means to or for me. ಅವನಿಗೆ ಪುಸ್ತಕ ಇಷ್ಟ. ಅವನಿಗೆ ಪುಸ್ತಕ ಇಷ್ಟ. He likes the book. Here the dative is avanige, which means to him or for him. However, there are situations where the dative is not necessary. This often happens when the subject of the verb is very clear from the context or when the verb itself implies the recipient of the action. For example, pustaka beku. Pustaka beku. A book is needed. Here it's implied someone needs the book but not explicitly stated. Chaha ista. Chaha ista. I or someone like or likes the tea. Again, the subject liking tea is implicit. So, while the dative is common and often recommended for clarity, it's not rigid rule for all users of these words. Adaru. Adaru, a separate case. Adaru, which means but or however, is different. It does not take the dative case. It's a conjunction used to connect clauses or sentences and it functions grammatically in a different way than the words we are focusing on today. Let's look at the question formation. You can indeed form questions with these words using interrogative suffixes a or va. Here's how it works. Beku. Beku, which means want, becomes beka. Beka. Or bedava. Bedava, which is do you want or don't you want. It's like that. Then we can look at an example. Nimage chaha beka. Nimage chaha beka. Do you want tea? We can also say ನಿಮಗೆ ಚಹಾ ಬೇಡವಾ. ನಿಮಗೆ ಚಹಾ ಬೇಡವಾ? Don't you want tea? Here there is one more form, ಬೇಡ್ವಾ, ಬೇಡ್ವಾ, which is colloquial. ನಿಮಗೆ ಚಹಾ ಬೇಡ್ವಾ? Don't you want tea? Next we have ಸಾಕು. ಸಾಕು, which means enough. ಸಾಕು becomes ಸಾಕಾ, ಸಾಕಾ, or ಸಾಲಲ್ವಾ, ಸಾಲಲ್ವಾ. It's like, is it enough or isn't it enough? For example, ಇಷ್ಟು ಸಾಕಾ, ಇಷ್ಟು ಸಾಕಾ, is this much enough? Or we can say, ಇಷ್ಟು ಸಾಲಲ್ವಾ, ಇಷ್ಟು ಸಾಲಲ್ವಾ, isn't this much enough? Then we have ಗೊತ್ತು, ಗೊತ್ತು, which becomes ಗೊತ್ತಾ or ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ವಾ, ಗೊತ್ತಾ or ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ವಾ. Do you know or don't you know? ಅವನ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಾ, ಅವನ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಾ, do you know about him? Or we can say, ಅವನ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ವಾ, ಅವನ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ವಾ, don't you know about him? Then we have ಇಷ್ಟ. ಇಷ್ಟ, which can be said as ಇಷ್ಟಾನಾ, ಇಷ್ಟಾನಾ, or ಇಷ್ಟ ಇಲ್ವಾ, or ಇಷ್ಟ ಇಲ್ವಾ. Do you like or don't you like? For example, ನಿಮಗೆ ಸಂಗೀತ ಇಷ್ಟಾನಾ, ನಿಮಗೆ ಸಂಗೀತ ಇಷ್ಟಾನಾ, do you like music? Or we can say, ನಿಮಗೆ ಸಂಗೀತ ಇಷ್ಟ ಇಲ್ವಾ, ನಿಮಗೆ ಸಂಗೀತ ಇಷ್ಟ ಇಲ್ವಾ, which means don't you like music? Now let's look at some important notes about questions. Notice the a or va suffix is added to the word. The negative question forms using va are often used to express surprise or to confirm something. ನಾನು ಎಲ್ಲಾದರೂ ಹೋಗಬೇಕು, ನಾನು ಎಲ್ಲಾದರೂ ಹೋಗಬೇಕು, I want to go somewhere. ಅವನಿಗೆ ಯಾಕಾದರೂ ಕೋಪ ಬಂದಿದೆ, ಅವನಿಗೆ ಯಾಕಾದರೂ ಕೋಪ ಬಂದಿದೆ, he is angry for some reason. ಯಾರಾದರೂ ನನಗೆ ಸಹಾಯ ಮಾಡಬಹುದಾ, ಯಾರಾದರೂ ನನಗೆ ಸಹಾಯ ಮಾಡಬಹುದಾ, can someone help me? ನನಗೆ ಏನನ್ನಾದರೂ ತಿನ್ನಬೇಕು, ನನಗೆ ಏನನ್ನಾದರೂ ತಿನ್ನಬೇಕು, I want to eat something. So by adding ಆದರೂ to you can create indefinite constructions and use them effectively. This adds another layer of expressiveness to your language. Now let's take a look at a sample conversation between Manish and a manager where they discuss and use these defective verbs.
ನಿಮ್ಮ ಹೋಟೆಲಲ್ಲಿ ರೂಮು ಬಾಡಿಗೆಗೆ ಇದೆಯಾ?
ಇದೆ ಸರ್. ನಿಮಗೆ ಎಂಥ ರೂಮು ಬೇಕು? ಸಿಂಗಲ್ ರೂಮು ಬೇಕೋ, ಡಬಲ್ ರೂಮು ಬೇಕೋ?
ನಾವು ಇಬ್ಬರು ಇದ್ದೀವಿ, ಆದ್ದರಿಂದ ನಮಗೆ ಡಬ್ಬಲ್ ರೂಮು ಬೇಕು. ಡಬ್ಬಲ್ ರೂಮಿಗೆ ಒಂದು ದಿನಕ್ಕೆ ಬಾಡಿಗೆ ಎಷ್ಟು?
ಡಬಲ್ ರೂಮಿಗೆ ಬಾಡಿಗೆ 1500 ರೂಪಾಯಿ.
ಕಡಿಮೆಯದು ಇಲ್ವಾ?
ಇಲ್ಲ ಸರ್, ಇದೇ ಕಡಿಮೆಯದು, ಬೇರೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ಇನ್ನೂ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ.
1500 ರೂಪಾಯಿಯ ರೂಮು ಒಂದು ಕೊಡಿ.
ಏ ಮಾಣಿ, ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಬಾ, ಇವರಿಗೆ 35ನೇ ನಂಬರ್ ರೂಮು ತೋರಿಸು.
ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಮದ್ರಾಸ್ ಊಟ ಇದೆಯಾ?
ಇಲ್ಲ ಸರ್, ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ಬಾಂಬೆ ಊಟ ಮಾತ್ರ ಇದೆ.
ನನಗೇನು ಬಾಂಬೆ ಊಟನೇ ಇಷ್ಟ, ಆದರೆ ನನ್ನ ಹೆಂಡತಿಗೆ ಅದು ಬೇಡ. ಅವಳಿಗೆ ಚಪಾತಿ ಇಷ್ಟ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಹತ್ತಿರದಲ್ಲಿ ಎಲ್ಲಾದರೂ ಬೇರೆ ಹೋಟೆಲ್ ಇದೆಯಾ?
ಹತ್ತಿರದಲ್ಲೇ ಒಂದು ಹೋಟೆಲ್ ಇದೆ, ಅದರ ಹೆಸರು ರಾಘವೇಂದ್ರ ಭವನ್. ನಿಮಗೆ ಅದು ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ವಾ?
ಇಲ್ಲ, ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. ಅದು ಎಲ್ಲಿದೆ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಹೇಳಿ.
ನಿಮಗೆ ಪ್ರಭಾ ಟಾಕೀಸ್ ಗೊತ್ತಾ?
ಗೊತ್ತು.
ಆ ಟಾಕೀಸ್ ಪಕ್ಕದ ಓಣಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ರಾಘವೇಂದ್ರ ಭವನ್ ಇದೆ, ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಮದ್ರಾಸ್ ಊಟ ಇದೆ.
ನಿಮ್ಮ ಹೋಟೆಲಲ್ಲಿ ಬೆಳಗ್ಗೆ ತಿಂಡಿಗೆ ಏನೇನು ಇರುತ್ತೆ?
ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ಇಡ್ಲಿ, ವಡೆ, ಸಾಂಬಾರ್, ಮಸಾಲೆ ದೋಸೆ, ರವೆ ದೋಸೆ, ಪೂರಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ಇರುತ್ತೆ.
ನಮಗೆ ಇಡ್ಲಿ, ವಡೆ, ಸಾಂಬಾರ್ ಸಾಕು.
ಎಷ್ಟೆಷ್ಟು ಕಳಿಸಲಿ ಸರ್? ಎಲ್ಲ ಎರಡೆರಡು ಕಳಿಸಲಾ?
ವಡೆ ಸಾಂಬಾರ್ 2 ಪ್ಲೇಟು ಸಾಕು. ಆದರೆ ಇಡ್ಲಿ 2 ಪ್ಲೇಟು ಸಾಲಲ್ಲ. ಇಡ್ಲಿ 3 ಪ್ಲೇಟು ಕಳಿಸಿ.
ಏನು ಸಿಹಿ ತಿಂಡಿ ಬೇಡವಾ ಸರ್?
ಬೇಡ.
Very well. Now let's look at the vocabulary we have learnt in this lesson. Ishta, ishta, like. Untu is there, South Canara dialect. Oni, oni, lane. Kalisu, send. Kodu, give. Gottu, no. Torisu, show. Badige, rent. Beku, want. Beda, not wanted. Mani, server or room boy. Saku, enough. Salalla, not enough. Sihitindi, sweet dish. Hana, money. Koli motte, hen egg. Mamsa, meat. Moole, bone. Sambala, salary. Duddu, money. Alright, let's wrap up our session on defective verbs in Kannada. Today, we dove into a really interesting and important part of the Kannada grammar, which is defective verbs. Remember, this lesson builds on what we covered previously, especially our last lesson on datives. Now, we moved on. In today's class, we studied defective verbs. As we discussed, these verbs are a bit quirky. They don't behave like the regular verbs you are getting used to. What makes them defective? Well, it's simply because they don't conjugate. Think about it. Regular verbs change form to show tense, number, gender, all those things. Defective verbs? Nope. They have a fixed form. That's why we call them defective. They are missing the typical conjugation ability. But don't let the name fool you. These defective verbs are actually super common and incredibly important in everyday Kannada. You have to understand them to use and understand Kannada naturally. That's why we spent this whole session on them. And what's the key to understanding them? It's all about the dative case. It is the crucial point. With defective verbs, the subject of the sentence isn't in the nominative case, like it's usually is. Instead, it's in the dative case. Remember, the dative case often indicates to or for. Think of it this way. With these verbs, the person or thing that wants, likes, knows isn't really acting. They are more like feeling or the state itself. Let's take beku, beku, want as our go-to example. We compared Nanu coffee kudiyuttene, I drink coffee, where Nanu is nominative subject doing the action of drinking. Then we contrasted it with Nanage coffee beku. Nanage coffee beku. I want coffee. Here, Nanage to or for me is in the dative. I am the one who wants, but the action of want is to me. It's a state of an action I am performing directly on the coffee. This dative structure is consistent across all defective verbs. We then looked at more examples such as saku, enough, ishta, like, and gottu, no. For each one, we saw that the person or thing experiencing enoughness, liking, or knowing is put in the dative case. Avanige ಎರಡು ರೊಟ್ಟಿ ಸಾಕು. Avanige ಎರಡು ರೊಟ್ಟಿ ಸಾಕು. 2 rotis are enough for him. ಅವನಿಗೆ to him is dative. ನನಗೆ ಪುಸ್ತಕಗಳು ಇಷ್ಟ. ನನಗೆ ಪುಸ್ತಕಗಳು ಇಷ್ಟ. I like books. ನನಗೆ means to me, which is dative. ಅವಳಿಗೆ ಅವನ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತು. ಅವಳಿಗೆ ಅವನ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತು. ಅವಳಿಗೆ is to her, which is dative. We also made sure to cover the negative forms. The good news is the dative case rule still applies. So, for don't want or not enough or don't like or don't know, we still use the dative subject ನನಗೆ. For example, ನನಗೆ ಚಹಾ ಬೇಡ. ನನಗೆ ಚಹಾ ಬೇಡ. I don't want tea. ಅವನಿಗೆ ಇಷ್ಟು ಸಾಲಲ್ಲ. ಅವನಿಗೆ ಇಷ್ಟು ಸಾಲಲ್ಲ. This much is not enough for him, and so on. Now, what are some common mistakes you should be careful to avoid? Number 1 is using the nominative case instead of dative with these verbs. This is a really common error for learners, so pay close attention to this. And mistake number 2, trying to conjugate these verbs. Don't do that. Remember, they are fixed in form, so they don't change. So how do you get good at this? Practice, practice and practice. That's the key. Try making your own sentences using these verbs. Really focus on using the dative case and remembering that fixed form. Read Kannada, listen to Kannada, immerse yourself in the language to get a feel for how these verbs are naturally used. And please, if you get stuck on a sentence or scenario, ask me. I'm here to help you. We also took a little detour and learned about indefinite constructions. We saw how adding adaru creates words like yelladaru, somewhere, yaradaru, someone, yenadaru, something. And guess what? Nanage yelladaru hogabeku. Nanage yelladaru hogabeku. I want to go somewhere. ಯಾರಾದರೂ ನನಗೆ ಸಹಾಯ ಮಾಡಬಹುದಾ? ಯಾರಾದರೂ ನನಗೆ ಸಹಾಯ ಮಾಡಬಹುದಾ? Can someone help me? Showed us how to combine these concepts. This adds even more expressiveness to your Kannada. To conclude, defective verbs are a vital part of Kannada grammar. They are unique, they use the dative case, and they are essential for everyday communication. Understanding them and most importantly, practicing their use is crucial if you want to become proficient in Kannada. So remember the key takeaways. Defective verbs don't conjugate. They use the dative subject. Know your common defective verbs like beku, ishta, saku, gottu. Practice to avoid nominative case errors and conjugation mistakes. And remember, you can use them with indefinite constructions using adaru. Keep practicing and don't hesitate to ask if you have any questions. Good luck and see you in the next lesson. Namaskara.